closing keynote. I hope everybody enjoyed the breakout sessions and learned a lot. For our closing keynote, we actually will be inviting you to join us for tea time.
Angela, thank you. Thank you for getting us the tea and the perfect setting for us three grand dames of the food industry to talk about those things that we've always thought about, the messy middle, but are too afraid to ask or too afraid to say to anybody else. Let's deal with that today. I think we have to wait for one more person. Michelle will be here, and you know, in her signature style, she'll blow in and we will start. So, how are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, Kantha.
This is terrific. Tea, hot water.
I'm coming! I'm here. Your God, is he coming? Chocolate everywhere. I need tea.
Always
And bourbon.
Do we have bourbon? Tea doesn't go with bourbon.
Tea today. Tea.
Bourbon. Go
At
with
least
everything.
at this time, tea. We'll do bourbon.
Tea it is. Okay. Let's have tea. But honestly, can we just talk about the economy and where we are right now? Chocolate was already in a disaster as it was with all these things attacking it, from disease to corruption and all sorts of things. And now we have the economy and tariffs and all this crap. I'm being polite.
That's polite.
Okay.
All right. Unfiltered as we are going to be, this thing about the economy is really amazing. I mean, look at the room. Very few people. I have people calling out saying, "Are they recording this? Are we going to hear you? Because I can't leave my job. I don't know if I'll have my job tomorrow." To be scared at this time, in this age, in this country, where we were once the leaders in everything, particularly in the food industry, particularly in Chicago, the center of the food industry. And today we have tariffs. What do you think about tariffs?
Oh gosh, Kantha. You know,
Terrific problem.
terrific problem.
I don't think so.
It is, and it's affecting so many ingredients that we buy from all over the world. And you know, every single month when I check on the prices, I see them going up a little bit at a time. But you know, yesterday I was at Costco, where you get things that are much better priced than many other places. Yes, small, like for Costco here. But the coffee that I typically buy was up by 30% at Costco.
So coffee, cocoa, I get it. But then it's things like vitamin C, the very fundamental things that we have to add to our packaged food so it's safe, so it has the right taste, so it has a long shelf life, and you can't get it because somebody decided to slap a 20, 30, 50, even 200% on it.
But what about Manila, Madagascar, super tiny island with really low wealth, and I mean, it's just basically a poverty state, and they're being slapped on it, and vanilla is their biggest export, and they can't afford to import things from the U.S. So all the vanilla that we use in candy, in bakery, in ice cream, it's all getting hit. Every small manufacturer is getting hit with vanilla pricing, if we can get it. Much less the tariffs that are attached to all of it, and that's going around the world with what we're doing with all sorts of ingredients. So what do you tell your clients? Because you work with a whole lot of big ones, and you work with governments, and you do all sorts of stuff, Kantha, that kind of makes you like our Yoda. So Yoda me, my dear.
I do speak like Yoda too sometimes. I get my words mixed up. But here are decisions being made in the boardroom that's affecting the people. SNAP. You know, SNAP program for people who cannot usually afford, and they're telling them you need to eat healthily, feed your families healthily, and now they can't afford it. What is wrong with making such decisions? And how do we, as food scientists and the food industry, stand up to this and say, enough is enough? And look for alternatives, but most of all, look for a scientific way to make things right. Do you have anything to add to it? You think?
I think you said it so well, Kantha. Not only should we make it right, we should
I advise, I work alongside, I should say, the trade commissions of some 14 different countries. So now, I mean, I had a conversation just very recently. One of them is in this room, for that matter. And it was a very odd feeling, you know, American who once led those conversations when we were essential was suddenly sitting back. And these two were having conversations across me because we are no longer relevant. The rest of the world is moving on. They are moving on and said, America, get out of your mess when you wake up, but we are going, and we are going to do things rightly. And that's a big issue because that affects our futures, our careers, our industries. A big issue.
Absolutely, and access to the ingredients that we actually want and need in order to make the foods healthy and viable and nutritious that we want to do, and not keep making them cheaper and cheaper to support that boredom we're talking about. Okay, here's my thing. We could talk about this one all day, but you said something that clicked with me that just went in my head now. You said scientific. Can we just go to AI for a minute? And AI, so we have lots of things around AI that I think is just a big elephant in the room, or gorilla, or whichever animal you like sitting in the room. In any case, I love the idea of AI and what it can do for medicine, and in fact what it can do for the food industry and for growing and such. But what's the deal with people using AI to do formulation? Like finance guys coming and going, oh no, I had ChatGPT do it. I'm like, cool, how many people do you want to kill?
You know, garbage in, garbage out. AI is fabulous. So we do need AI, and we need to grow alongside AI. So I teach at Johns Hopkins, and I think the dean saw an unsuspecting little Pollyanna and said, can you write, I know I come across that. So can you write the policy for AI? And I said, but I know nothing about AI. That's why I'm giving you this project. Can you go figure it out and then write the policy? So I wrote a policy, and my fellow professors said, why would you do that? Why would you say that every course should have something about AI when we teach students how to use AI and then teach students how to find issues that come because of AI executed incorrectly? So something that I'm sure you're all being asked is AI going to take our job? That's the wrong question. The question really is, what is AI doing? You're a big expert in AI. And what should we be doing? Because AI is all about what the technology being put in, but it's the intelligence that, fortunately, at this point, some of us, because some of us human beings still are not there. Some of us have the intelligence, we're able to have the judgment, the ethics, the integrity. What do you think of AI?
So I think it's such a fantastic tool that we have been given. It is also a cost to us, so we need to understand what this means. We just finished an AI internship, which I ran and some classes with it. But the internship was a fantastic opportunity to learn how students think about AI and how they might use it. And we also had an exercise in which we wanted to see how you might use it if you didn't have knowledge about food, which is the general public. So we had a group of students, they were all 17 and 18 years old, and they took AI to create foods about food, create a social media post on behalf of me, by the way. And they presented me with all of these great ideas that they came up with. Every single one of it, they were filled with misinformation. They were filled with inaccurate information about agriculture, about how plants are grown in the environment, or how they behave in soil, things like that, right? So, if you think about what AI can do for you, we are far from being able to use it in a really good way to educate the people in our industry. But in addition, the general public doesn't have the knowledge that most food scientists do. So one of my charges to all of you is to think very critically about where you use AI, because when you use it for the right purpose, it can be a fantastic tool. For instance, for brainstorming, if you didn't have an idea, you can ask AI to one of the tools, one of the LLMs, to tell you, what are the other things that I didn't think about? Great. We also need to know what knowledge we have so that we apply that knowledge in critically reading that, because the AI will give you very authoritative sounding information that may be not information, misinformation. So
That's the uncomfortable truth, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That the fundamental education is what separates us from AI and AI applications. And the future belongs to those who can use AI, harness it, teach it to do the things. Teach it to do the useless things. If I could have AI do my dishes and fold my laundry, I'd be so happy. But it doesn't work that way. But I think there might be a way to do that. So we have to do that. But talking about the future, what else do you see?
I love the idea that AI, when we look at the mass amount of data that can be collected, that we can really use it to make sure foods are wholesome, especially those that we're growing as agricultural, but also as we do formulations, that we can really understand the science behind it, what nutrients are really in there, and be able to build a nutrient profile that's really accurate and not just based on calculations or things that we developed in the 1940s. Angela, can you do me a favor? Because I know we've only talked a couple of times, but I'd love your answer on AI and how you're working with students on it. Can you give me more background on what you do with your alliance?
Absolutely. So our alliance is the Alliance for Advanced Sanitation, and there's a lot of things that we think in the food industry that have to have sanitation. Equipment has to be cleaned for every single run when you manufacture it. All of our restaurants need a sanitation program. Beyond all of that, we need to understand how we use our chemicals and how we can use them very, efficiently as well as ethically. But in addition to that, we need to understand how do we do a better job. So our alliance really is about education. It's about looking at technologies that we can enhance and use for food, specifically in food. We test out these applications in specific companies, in facilities. And then we look at new technologies that can be used for the future state of what food might be, and also to make things more efficient. So in terms of AI, I think one of the things that we're looking for is not just AI from what you can access in LLMs, but looking at it from large language models, right? So, which is what we use in ChatGPT or any of those platforms. And you probably have as Copilot. And AI, Copilot on Microsoft, which
That other thingy that shows up.
annoying thing that shows up. Yeah.
But it's very good.
It's very good, yes.
Wait, I like the paperclip better.
The one that
He was really cute and he danced a lot, like really friendly. I don't feel like the ones are nearly as friendly.
Right, and if it tries to ask me about things that I would like to do when I already know what I'm doing, or to rewrite things that I wrote, I don't need its help to do some of those things.
Well, and I just recently told one to shut up and stop asking me questions about what I'm working on because it's confidential. Like, I'm asking it, like, what are some key points of, I don't know, pineapple? And he's like, oh, are you working on something pineapple?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Nosy.
you also wanted sugar? Are you going to make me a pineapple dessert? And like, I actually said, shut up, it's confidential. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. That would make sense. Like, really? Because I feel like you're not Data on Star Trek, who I think you should be, because he's really cool and a little bit hot. And that's what I'm thinking AI should be now. And it's not there yet, but I think it should get there. Because I don't like the intrusion.
And you talked about formulation, so yeah, I think AI can do formulation, but then does AI know that xanthan gum, for example, behaves differently at pH 4 and pH 7?
Well, I think that's the cool part, right? Because AI, given what it is, it should absolutely be able to do that. Because when we look at demographics, right? When we look at who are food scientists now, those of us in Gen X, there's like 8 of us in the U.S. total.
And 3 are sitting here.
Right? I mean, there's just not enough. So baby boomers, a lot of them have either retired, and then the economy, there's so many places having early retirement, so we lose all that knowledge, and that, or they're sitting in meetings, and then there's 8 of us in Gen X going racing around trying to help everybody. Quite frankly, I'm hoping AI can like take some of the stuff I've said 1,000 times and put it on a recorder somewhere so I know here. Because honestly, there's a whole lot of points like that I need to be automated, because we're not going to get to Star Trek, and I really want to see other worlds if we don't have data like that to be easily found when it's needed, where it's needed, without having to look in all your old textbooks, which is what we had to do to try and find it, right? Or now who do you call, and do they actually understand manufacturing? Because a whole lot of folks have stopped hiring scientists in major companies, and instead we're supposed to use it from our vendors who don't hire ones that have years of experience either.
Talking about years of experience, I'm seeing a new thing. This thing called called analog. I always thought it had to do with my watch. Now there's analog, there's analog and there's substitute. And then there's the FDA that calls it imitation.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that?
Okay, I'm all for my soy milk because it's way better than my dairy milk for everybody around me. But the whole fake meat thing or pretending to be honey when you're not, like it's bee-free honey, seriously, I know you have a whole thing on that. Your soapbox just gets higher each time you talk about it. The reality is when we have honey and they call it something like bee-free, well, the whole value of honey is the pollens that are in it and that they're local, and they're one of the big things that drive our biomes to be able to be healthy because we eat local things, we therefore don't become allergic to them. If we take away things like honey and the value that it brings in pollen, we're going to have more illness.
So what's happening then with all these investors putting millions into bee-free honey, where outsiders who made their money making some software and now think they're getting in to fix the broken food system, and they think they can make this honey that they can just simply stir some sugar and water. But then I also teach food safety regulations at Johns Hopkins University, and my students ask me, wait a minute, isn't that what you dealt with in the chapter called fraud? Well, you're the fraud expert, tell me that.
Yeah, and I chair the fraud PG for AFP, and the conversation there is how do we get rid of fraud, how do we detect fraud, and how do we know how to do that for not just honey, but for any other product in which you have people trying to pose a product and position it as something that's a substitute. It has no business being in the market because it is fraud. And we need to be more vocal about this. I think we need to be sort of speaking
Vocal?
out.
What do you think of peanut butter? Fake peanut butter.
How about, peanut-free peanut butter? Excuse me? Or chocolate-free chocolate? Cocoa and
Why
stuff?
not call it what it really is?
So what do you call peanut butter that's not peanut butter?
Not peanut butter.
Oh, peanut butter not.
How about roasted, I don't know,
Roasted something.
soybean or something?
Soybean something, yes, but I don't
Wait a
think
minute, if you have a peanut allergy, that makes sense. But on the other hand, if you're plumping this out and putting all this stuff, and you're taking the fundamental food, which is essentially the first food you put in relief camps, in hunger camps, for the hungry. This is the first food you put in because it not only provides you the nutrition, but it does it without harming you. Harm, we got harm.
We really need to talk about farm.
Yeah, so, but we do this. Now, I can understand if you're allergic to peanut, but why are we putting so much into it? We're making a lot of manipulation and then selling it for a lot more, and people buying it thinking it's better for them.
But same thing happened with cocoa.
right, but Kantha, I think there's one other factor that we need to always keep in mind because all of these analogs or substitutes or whichever way you go, right, we're producing them here. This is a first world problem. Having a lot of peanut allergy is a first world problem. We need to recognize that so that that lens is used whenever we develop something, especially if we're trying to brand it and especially if we're trying to send it out to the country. These are things that are changing. Food allergies became a big thing over the last 30 years. They didn't used to be that way, and we know that there's a medical reason for that, and there's pediatricians that we should bring to the table next time.
Yeah, that's what this other couple is for.
Probably. Next time, yeah.
So what do you think about all those different milks and the dairy industry saying, oh, you can't call it milk? What do you think of that?
I think milk should be milk. Maybe almond milk should
Almond
tell
juice.
me it's almond juice.
But
Yes.
it's not really almond juice, it's, or as the macadamia nut guy said, macadamia is just a crushed raisins, some things you crush it, you throw the cacao out and then use the liquids. There's a lot going into it. I can ask you, see, because I see you all the time pouring these different, she's got a whole array of milks.
Amazing. Your kitchen is amazing.
Amazing. So she's got all of those. I love it. But
Well,
you're not substituting milk. You're doing it for taste.
I'm doing it for taste and for the lactose isn't there. But quite frankly, I personally think I don't care if it comes out of a teat or not. If I want it on my cereal, I'm eating on there, I'm going to call it milk. But whatever. But when we look at something like cocoa, which has amazing flavonoids that do phenomenal things in your blood system, both in the blood vessels and in the heart, and we think there's some brain health in there too, but we know for sure within the blood vessels, that inner lining, that when we used to say, what was it, like hardening of the arteries was was like a thing that used to be said, right? Well, it was that inner layer would become stiff, and it could no longer take the blood coming up through it. The flavonoids in chocolate keep that soft. We know that to be true. So if we simply say, oh, well, cocoa is an issue because, there's poor people making it, and golly, why would we want to keep paying them? Let's come up with another way to do it. And that's the issue. I mean, that's the big piece of cocoa, is that we don't want to keep supporting poor folks in poor countries because it can only grow in north or south of the equator by 20 degrees. Like, that's a really bad option to me. Milk alternatives, I see, there's value in it from an economy standpoint because having so many dairy cows out there absolutely affects the environment. So having alternatives.
They make a lot of noises, right?
Do, but also they're very sweet and lovely, and we love them.
But we like cheese,
Yeah.
we like cheese.
We love it. It's a place for vegans, right?
There's a place for vegans, there's a place for these things, and it's, dairy people are really upset about the name milk, and whatever, like I said, we'll call it beverage, but quite frankly, I'm not gonna ask the hotel or ask the restaurant, oh, do you have some oat beverage for me? That, right?
So you're saying innovation
Yes.
is really
Like,
not
that's
worth
really
it unless it has integrity, purpose,
Exactly.
reason for
There's a
it.
reason for it that isn't just about investors making more money. Because we have way too much issue with that right now.
So branding, all this marketing for the wrong thing, pretty much distinguishes those who know from those who don't.
Correct.
So it's no longer cool to carry something thinking, look at my frappe mocha chica chica. I can never say those things, right? I'm just wondering about that. I'm thinking, okay, well, while we're talking about that, let's talk about the real world. You talked about this world, and you talked about poor countries, countries where things are actually grown, because we somehow don't grow a lot of stuff here. What is the real impact of our science and most of all, our regulation? Because science doesn't care. See, regulations, legal laws are man-made or human-made. Because I think some women also came into it, so it's woman-made, man-made kind of stuff, right? But it was done for a reason, for a trade, for protectionism, for some reason. So I think it's actually a badge of honor to say, I'm not always legal. I like to be illegal. But ethics is a different thing. Integrity is a different thing. Science is like that. Science does not bend for anybody.
Good science does.
That's
Proper science.
there is no such thing as bad science. It's people who use science badly, they should get underneath for that. Like shysters. Science shysters.
Well, I don't agree with that, because there's also things where it can be good intentionally that don't mean it makes it good science. If I do a study on 5 people, and because the easiest ones to get are 18 to 25-year-old boys, because that's what we've tested everything on, right? Because all you have to do is offer them pizza, and we'll take any shot, swallow anything, do whatever whatever you ask them to for pizza. Suddenly everything's done on that, right? And you tested 5 people. Your intentions might be good, but that's still bad science. You haven't really done science well. You haven't
Proper
properly.
statistics are important.
Exactly. You haven't used proper methodology. But I want to come back to your question, because it's really hitting me right now as a candy scientist. This idea of
That's
law.
right. Candy was a thing. Did you know there was such a thing?
I didn't
Candy
know, I
was a
learned
thing.
this, I
A
learned this.
scientist known for creating and doing innovation in candy.
Things that we
I vow to thee.
So we're seeing in lots of things, but especially candy, cookies, frosting and stuff, is this, we must go to natural colors, right? And if we talk about that, we can talk about that for another hour as well, as the impact of what that might be on soil and where we're getting these things. And a lot of them are carrots and potatoes and things that are growing in soil and probably not in the US, so what kind of things chemicals are in them. But aside from that, just an idea of, let's get rid of the FD&C colors and put in fruit and vegetables. In my heart, I'm not opposed to that. FD&C colors come from petroleum. I am not opposed to getting petroleum out of my diet. That's cool. But when we look at the US overall, and we look at obesity rates, when we look at the number of women that die in childbirth, when we look at the malnutrition that exists, we look at the kids that don't have proper breakfast or fruits and vegetables, and then we wonder why, some of the primaries and stuff we have, well, guess what it does to your brain? And it's not because of the color you added. We have got to get rid of these red herrings and get laws that are really about making major changes in our food systems so that they stop being controlled by CEOs and boards sitting way up in their heaven-high houses, controlling the food system so that they get more money, and people are not getting the nutrition they get, but they can do it because, hey, look at us, we changed all the laws, aren't we cool? No, you didn't have impact.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, what do you think when you say European food is better? You know, we start raising, oh, look at our products. It's not, this is not allowed in Europe. In Europe, everything is so clean. What do you think about that? As a same scientist, I studied in Europe. I studied Europe. I don't think the science changed. How did those guys get to be better? And are they better?
And Kantha, I think that, working for global companies where you make products in the US and you're developing it for other markets, or in those countries developing it for the US market, both happen. And in those kind of product development processes, we understand, every scientist who's working on that, at some point regulatory gets involved, and you understand that these sometimes are semantics. They're nothing more than that. Sometimes it's about looking at the same science and making different decisions, different regulatory decisions.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and different policy decisions based on your constituency. And a US market requires different things than a different country in Europe. We have very different supply chains. We have, yes.
What about NASCAR foods?
I don't want them.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah,
Those foods that have all those
Yeah.
stickers on it, just
Yeah.
like a NASCAR.
But let's go back to one on that, because there's lots of things around Europe where they just use E-numbers to fake it, and they're using the exact same things we are, right? But there are other things that add value to that, because one of them that you taught me that still blows my mind is glyphosate, like what's that?
Glyphosate.
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 Okay, icky stuff.
Sometimes we can't all pronounce it, but we know what it is.
PhDs.
However, I mean, there's a real debate that has happened over glyphosate. There's also a legal case that I think can be made. But I will say that I have reviewed many testing results where glyphosate is a target. And what our food system has in terms of glyphosate is a teeny tiny number, if ever. Most companies have zero.
Well, okay, so I follow that. However, it's not about what it actually is or finding that in it, but the idea of things like pasta and bread. And folks, including me, who really will struggle with pasta and all sorts of gastrointestinal issues when I'm eating a US brand, but I can eat 2 pounds of one that's been imported, and it's because the way they use it to dry stuff faster, and if you let it dry slower, then the right things work, and I can eat fabulous pastas and bread over in Europe that I can't eat here, and it has to do, at least according to Kantha, and I believe her, because she's the one I call when I don't believe ChatGPT, so she is my AI, but can you talk to us more about that, because there's real things about that doesn't have to be about the science.
It's very complex. That's the answer. It depends and it's complex. It's complex because we are complex. Although 99% of the genetic makeup is alike, and 1% that's different also somehow makes us very different in how we respond to certain things. So when grain is dry in this country, when we like to do, as I say, things that are very fast, because we also try to do it with speed and greed. So we actually, apply glyphosate on certain crops as a drying mechanism. We don't know yet, but it's believed that some of the residual, maybe the glyphosate or maybe the effect of the glyphosate, could have an effect. It's important to know that food science and nutrition science is a very young science. We are still in that quadrant where we don't know what we don't know. So we do have to approach it cautiously, respectfully, and most of all, purposefully.
Well, I think it's also about knowledge, right? Making sure that information is out there, because we should at least have the access to know and understand how some of these are different. Like, not everybody can call you at whatever time.
Right.
I do get a lot of calls. I like it when it comes with a paycheck.
Yes,
Well, you also mentioned something you said, you both said, that it's complex, right? Like, there's complexity within these systems, and we sometimes try to make it a little too bumper stickerish. I, however, like bumper stickers, and things that fit really easy and ideally rhyme. So just FYI. Which brings us to UPS.
Example of a bumper sticker gone awry.
Very well.
Okay? So it's very difficult to understand how food systems.
Wait, should we talk about UPS? Because it's
Kantha,
not like something that flies overhead.
But Kantha, I really want you to tell the story of how UPS came to be.
But
What
let's
did I
say,
tell them about?
but let's talk about what is it?
She said UPF correctly.
Yes, yes,
I
yes,
did,
yes.
because I kept writing it wrong, right?
Yes.
Ultra processed foods.
Ultra-processed foods. This moniker given to foods supposedly because it's highly processed. But the funny thing is, when you ask someone what is an ultra-processed food, they turn it around and look at the number of ingredients, the kinds of ingredients. They go, wait a minute, didn't you say processed when you're looking at ingredients? So do you all know how ultra-processed came to be? I'm asking you. So,
Oh, yeah, can you fill
okay.
But
So
you
Carlos
understand.
Montero, a pediatric epidemiologist in Brazil, was wondering why children and why the incidence of obesity, diabetes, early onset diabetes, and other weight-related metabolic conditions were suddenly taking off. So he did a very limited test. Now, if he had taken my clinical study class, he would have gotten an F. Carlos Montero, big F. But he took this thing where he took two groups of people, children from the Amazon. They'd never seen a packaged food except a banana, naturally packaged for you. So they got that, and he gave them a diet of hot dogs, chips, candy, and soda. Lots of sugar, lots of salt, hot dogs, fat. He took the biomarkers, their vitals before and after. And of course, if you eat that, and you've never eaten that, your system reacts to it, and you go off.
What a great control study with a limited number of people.
And he did it twice. He did it twice, and then he cut through the legislative system. He didn't follow the proper procedure or protocol, but just tapped on somebody at the WHO and said, look what I got. Remember he said bumper sticker, easy, simple? Science does not translate to 140 characters. But he did. And he said, if you eat packaged foods, this is what happens, and that is called ultra-processed. And then he categorized foods into 4 categories based on how processed they were. But they're not on the basis of process. It's on the basis of what they contain. So it seemed clear. WHO jumped into Latin America and said, you cannot buy this with our stamp or any kind of support system. Canada, our wiser neighbor, jumped on it and applied it to their labeling system. And now that's coming to your store next to you because the FDA is going to do it. Here's the issue. There's no definition. The definition is unclear. The definition changes over time, even by the author in his team. And I have a small badge that I like to, I'm a professorial type, as you say. So Carlos Montero kept trying to come back with, as we started protesting, saying, this is wrong. Oh, here's it. He kept changing his stuff. And finally, in 2019, he wrote an article, peer-reviewed publication. So when you write an article in a peer-reviewed publication, you write about subjects, right? But he chose to write about the protagonist of the packaging industry. And he has a table. And the second last name on that table is my name. So proud of it. Because he made all of them and said they make their money, or this enterprise makes its money by promoting this or marketing this. And he gave me the best badge I could have ever done. He said, I don't know how she makes her money, but she supports packaged foods industry. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's good. So that now is coming to us, and we have our younger people who simply think, oh, that's UPF, that's ultra-processed. Bottled water is ultra-processed. So if you make a brownie at home, and if you have 5 or less ingredients, it's okay. If you add a little more, it's probably okay because it's at home. But if you put it in a package and you put a colorful name on it, it's ultra-processed. Science does not compute.
It does not compete.
Well, and it really affects women, right? Because still to this day, it's the majority of women that are going to get smacked saying, you didn't make homemade brownies, therefore you don't know how to feed your family, you used the box, right? I mean, there's so many pieces where, there's pieces that make sense, right? And the reality is, we do have major issues with our health system, and a whole lot of it applies to food, and how we are eating, and how we are growing that food. But the reality is, when we start attacking things like that, we're attacking women, and the ability for women to give nutrition.
I can expand on that.
Yes.
The biggest assault on women is really when they go after infant formula. Okay?
That's a big one.
Infant formula. So sometimes women cannot feed their babies, so they rely on infant formula. But ultra-processed, like Monica, goes after any food to which 15% or more salt, sugar, or fat has been added. Now, ladies and gentlemen, breast milk, the number one thing every one of us gets to live, contains sugar, fat, and it is the sweetest thing on earth. Because that's what the brain needs, that's what the baby needs to grow. So when you make a formula, that's really what you're putting in it. But they said no. So they want women to go back. So think about the workers, the people who support their families, have jobs, have a child, and now they can't go back because they can't get formula because it is bad. It's an ultra-processed food. That is an assault on women, and it's going backwards. Not
Women
allowed.
are stepping away from the workforce, especially those women in science, after they reach the age of 30, primarily because they want to have children. There's a window of time to have children. Most companies don't do a good job of supporting mothers. Just saying you have a room for breastfeeding isn't good enough. And there's a whole lot more that goes into it, and I think in the food industry, we make packaged foods so that people can have it in places when you can't make your own food at home, right? Or when you want to make something more quickly. And these are all ways in which women get out of having to do this burdensome work, but also it gives us options of all the different things that we can eat. And like you said, Kantha, little babies, they need these things. Sugar, fats, these are what makes the baby. We need them for the child to grow. So, targeting these kinds of things are, one aspect of it. But in addition, every characteristic that Carlos Montero targeted, those are all things that help us keep the food safe. So we need to process things, and that word processing should not be made a bad word. Right? If anybody's trying to make it a bad word, please stop them. Because we need to be able to heat treat things, we need to be able to grind things, we need to be able to add sugar, salt, and also processing techniques to get the preservation we need, which was used for thousands and thousands of years.
Well, here's the other piece of that, right? Because I love that point, right? That processing is so key. But the other piece in there then is that we keep putting it back to the consumer to have to figure this stuff out, which is just so wrong. The reality is the food itself isn't ultra-processed, it's the ingredients going into it. We can use whole grain, we can use stuff. Why were they actually taken out? Because people like it better? No, because it's easier to process. Because the equipment doesn't jam up. These are things that are bad choices that, again, go back to that, who's in that boardroom? Because women are losing their jobs or leaving the industry so they can feed their families better or take care of them because it's plus money gives child care as well. But the reality is where they actually need to be is in the decision maker seats. That's where women and people of color, we need so much more because they have so much more information and understanding of food systems, growth, content, how we feed them, when we feed them, where it matters. So content is key, right? But some of these ingredients are mauled to death, and so what you have is this over-refined piece of crap that now goes into the thing, and then they go, oh, that's ultra-processed. Well, not if you made it correctly, it wasn't. But when I see things like, I'm a candy scientist, I love sugar. It's awesome. But also, you know when you're eating candy that you're getting sugar. It's very transparent. We should not find sugar in tomato sauce or in yogurt. That or ham. Bacon. Well, unless you like, well, okay, wait, maple syrup bacon. Okay, but not every day. Okay, but when we look at that, right, like I shouldn't have to look at my yogurt as a mom shopping. I'm not one, but that's okay. I have sisters that are, right? Like you shouldn't have to look at your yogurt to see how much sugar is in it. You shouldn't go to Starbucks for a sugar-free drink and have to have 16 grams or whatever sugar that is in it.
Sugar,
It is sugar diet. Yeah, that, right? Like I
Like
don't
addiction. We need to get the consumer addicted to our products.
Let's talk about addiction. Let's talk about another dirty little secret of food industry has. Protein.
Oh,
protein, and I'm looking at them going, oh my God, you're doing it all wrong. And the food industry, instead of standing up for its rights, they've hired food scientists who have told them, this is how much protein we need, this is the kind of protein, this is what we do. Take that out, let's put some other plant-based protein into it, let's charge more. But we've not tested it, we don't know if it's really good for them. Let's just make it.
But they'll still tell them it's good for them.
Oh, it's good for them, yes.
Exactly, protein.
NASCAR.
NASCAR.
Well, it's the thing that, it makes you slim and it keeps your weight down.
And the more the better.
Yes.
But
But that's
you know
about
what?
it. If something is good for you, more of it is better.
When my friend was told me, his doctor told him that he must have 100 grams of protein plus 5 grams of creatine every day.
Oh, fantastic. Is it good to
Early onset dementia.
Let's talk about that.
Because sugar, carbohydrates, and fat, our bodies know how to process it.
Yeah.
In protein, something else happens. When you have excess protein, the body looks at it, oh my God, what is she doing? And what is this thing? So it takes it and squirrels it away in different parts of your body. But if it does it and puts it on your brain, and it starts coating your brain, suddenly it's like me in the morning, where are my keys, where are my shoes? Oh, I put my keys in my shoes. What are they on there?
And then she uses excuses at 7:30 in the morning like, well, I come from a non-English speaking country. India that speaks English, and also she's been here for way more years than I. But that would be the call at 7:30 in the
So
morning.
I'm going to walk on the show floor today and I'm going to be looking at all the proteins. You know what I'm going to be looking at? Have you tested it? Do you know its configuration is native? Have you done a long-term study to
It's
see
bioavailable, like in your body actually recognizes it.
It's bioavailable. And by the way, do you know where you got your protein from? Because many of these proteins, plant-based proteins, come from somewhere else. And as the market grows, more farms are getting into it. But how do we know that it will follow the right step? Will it have a Q step? Are you sure it's safe in that product? Because when you have a hamburger,
So Kantha, here's a conversation that I think is going in the wrong place. Grass, right?
not the grass,
Not that grass, the other kind of
What is
grass,
it?
generally recognized as safe, right?
which is not a certification, but just a
Right.
status. Okay.
And many companies seem to think or seemed to think that was how they would say and claim things were safe.
Well, wasn't that like the wolf on the Chihuahua managing the chicken coop? Because if you're doing your own grass, that's not right, right?
That's correct.
There needs to be a lot more than that, and I think companies have taken too much liberties with that
Yeah.
and said, yes, we have grass and grain, we're grass approved, we're FDA approved. I've heard this told to me
Yeah.
at conferences, and sometimes I want to say, no, right? But there's so much more that this grass conversation can be and should be, but we also need to say that as scientists, you need to have different studies. Toxicologists do these kinds of studies. Food safety assessments, when we do these, we're looking at far more than that. So I'm looking at your grass report and going, okay, I'd like to see this and this and this. But if you're not going to do that, until this day, we have been making products. The food safety assessment has been done by all the scientists in every single company and said, okay, I can make a safe food. I can make a very safe food that is really bad for you.
Exactly. That.
So we have a lot to do here, and I think this is the time, the moment when food scientists need to be able to say, this may not be right, I may not have the right information, but I know something is wrong. Bring in the other people that need to be the other
Where do they learn? How do they learn that capability? Because we've been holding some groups with
Right.
teas and parties. And
More
we've
tea.
invited- Yeah, more tea. We're having more
sugar minds. Yeah.
So we're having parties where we've invited people, and we've invited food scientists, we're teaching them how to speak, how to own your product, how to tell your CEO or the CEO's wife who wants a pink chocolate chip cookie that chocolate chips are never pink. Okay? No, cannot do. Do not do. And how to convince the procurement guy when he goes with the numbers game that this is not how you create food products. And food has to be made with respect, with purpose, and most of all, we've talked about this. Doctors, they take an oath, do no harm. When will food scientists and the food industry take an oath of do no harm?
I just asked you that yesterday.
Would you give me an answer? When do we?
I asked a question. You were supposed to get it.
Okay,
I'm
so
going to ask
Okay,
everybody.
thought.
I'm going to ask everybody in the room, when will that happen? Because because I feel like it needs to happen, it should have happened years ago, but when are we going to do this? We need to do this.
You
We
know
have a
what will happen
responsibility.
when there are more women in the boardroom?
True,
Women
true.
occupy a disproportionate, what should I say, presence in the food value chain, not just the supply value chain. Where it is grown, where it is harvested, where it is processed, where it is packaged, all the way to food packaging companies, processing companies, even up to the packaging, you have a whole bunch of women. And then it goes to the retail store. Again, marketing, it beams, it's like a beacon out to women. And it's the women shoppers who decide what foods their family can eat. Do you know where they're missing? In the boardroom, where decisions are made and where profits are shared. We need to put them there, because when they look at this food that made my family sick, made you how many millions? You gotta go. I gotta be in charge. That's what we need to do.
More questions need to be asked.
Well, they do, and it's women and scientists of every shape and color, right? Because when scientists are in the boardroom, we get a lot more questions being asked and answered properly. Especially women scientists. Well, let's keep that plugged in there, because we do need way more women in there, but we need women in there that know how to speak to science. But here's what we really need, especially from a group like this. I was just talking to a young gentleman a couple days ago, and he said he went into finance because he wasn't really sure what he wanted to do, but he knew that with a finance degree, he would end up being a CFO or a CEO of some company, which he would have a range of choices of. As scientists, I don't hear anyone talking to science classes and saying other than, gee, when you work at Mondelez, or when you work at Kraft, or when you work at General Mills, or when you work at ABM, nobody gives scientists even a shot at leadership, or a thought of leadership. And until scientists are taking leadership roles, we are going to continue to have TikToks of finance guys and food babe rattling off complete junk that sounds pretty, but makes no scientific sense whatsoever.
And when food babe and similar people get too loud, companies make massive decisions that cost a lot of money. And I would say, since I don't work there anymore, at Kraft Foods, we changed the color of the mac and cheese. We changed it to a natural color.
Do you know that when they did that, they actually had that protest behind my block, because I was the biggest person against a food babe. So she calls from there and says, I'm behind your apartment and they're launching this. So when I called Kraft, they said, but we did it stealthily. Why?
Yes, they didn't stealth
Why
it.
aren't you doing it?
Right, but also why? I think the companies, like the Crafts of the world, have the scientific, or had the scientific background and personnel who they could have used to do the education. Companies are not doing this. I would love for them to do that, because you're squandering the scientific knowledge that you pay for. You know, if you have those scientists on staff, use them to be the voice for your company, because they know a lot more than the boardroom.
See, I disagree with that. Like, I hear you, and it's a lovely thought, but I don't think companies are going to get there. Like, because again, it's a process of getting more on there. I think it's time for every scientist in this room to get on TikTok and Instagram and start making your voice heard, because that's all they're doing. And for the love of God, don't do it in your car, because I am so sick of people in their car, really, honestly.
Oh, you don't like that from my car?
Yeah, the seatbelt, okay, here's my deepest thought, as they're posting on the camera. Yes, so scientists.
Is the shower okay?
I was like in the near one, shirtless, yeah, that's totally cool. So can we please get scientists, get your thoughts, make sure they're real, make sure they're scientific, and have fun with it, because quite frankly, you can have tea too, and have fun with it, and enjoy your friends with it, and actually talk to other folks about the science, and about that there's real people out there, that others can join us. There's real science, it's valuable, it's fun, and not all of us sit in a lab in the basement. We do other cool stuff. I crawl under chocolate. Exactly.
It's in the River North area, it's got view of the river, it's fantastic.
Lots of candy equipment.
Lots of equipment, lots of food, lots of knowledge, and lots of guts to say it like it is. To say, we do need to revamp the rules of this game. Before ChatGPT thinks those are the rules. So we need to say, we need to change this. So, women's health, for example. 51% of the world's population was totally ignored because they were inconvenient to study.
Until 1983.
1993.
1993 is when they finally had to put women into studies.
Well, we are complicated. We change. We change over
Which is
time.
awesome, as we should be. And instead of being celebrated, like, hey, these are complex creatures, we should study them, they're awesome. They went, oh no,
Too complicated.
it's too hard.
But then that's about study design, right? They never realized that you should include longitudinal studies. Instead, we'll say 18 to 25, okay, maybe we'll use you.
They absolutely realized, they chose not to.
It's money.
Money.
It's money.
Exactly. So that's not about not choosing, that's actively you're not understanding it. They actively chose to do that, we actively have to change that at a much, much faster speed, right?
And these are the kinds of things that get proposed to grants, to granting organizations, right? The USDA, the NSF, all of these guys who produce those grant funds. And we're sending these things to our government. So if there's a moment in time in which we can say, hey, these are our asks, please make sure that you are having more representative studies so that the scientists then propose better studies and they're funded in a more appropriate way. And then we will get better food.
So what are you looking forward to going to the show floor today?
So I'm looking forward to seeing some really cool new ingredients, ideally fibers, and having fibers actually taste good and be soluble or insoluble, but fiber we absolutely need way more of.
The new GLP thing?
I love GLP stuff.
Anybody who has fiber says it's GLP, but doesn't it still taste like cardboard?
I don't think it does.
You know, for succulent fiber.
I don't need to be succulent.
I think it has to be succulent. In nature, every fiber food is succulent. When you make it, those bars are not succulent.
Then they'll make the bar,
And the
but you
David's
need to
bar.
make, oh my God, don't get me started.
Is that succulent? It's got fiber, it's
Oh.
got all the right numbers.
Succulent even, no, just everything about that bar is so horribly wrong. And the fact that dietitians are like, I eat it for lunch, it has everything. Are you kidding me? EPG, fake fat, it's okay, your body doesn't recognize it. Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. If your body doesn't recognize a fat, and it is matter, and we learned in 8th grade physics that matter doesn't disappear, where do you think it's going? Exactly.
We need things to go in and also out.
And
We
you
don't
know,
need it to be deposited in various places in our body. And this is the science that we need to integrate into product development.
we also need it to go out at a reasonable time.
Right.
That doesn't mean that we're racing somewhere. So there's that. But I think we're running out of time. So let's go back to a point, because we have a lot of rights, which is cool, because that's who we are. And also, we like saying them out loud, because way too many times you're supposed to
We
solve
always
it up.
say it out loud. We also help companies
We
solve
do.
it.
We help companies
That's
out.
what we do.
But I think that point that you made, and I think we all talked about it yesterday, is that idea that medical professionals take an oath, and therefore they can look at higher level leadership or authorities and say, I'm not doing it, it goes against my Hippocratic oath to do no harm. What if we had our own, as food scientists, so that young food scientist, when the marketing director or vice president says, you're going to make this nasty thing, and we're going to sell a lot of it, they can go, sorry, I get you pay me, but I took an oath. And I don't have to do that. I'm not going to do that. If you really want to talk to somebody about that, you're going to need to talk to my industry elders, because they're not going to make me do it either. And if you want them to start calling you, then go for it. But in the reality is, we should be making a commitment as food scientists to do no harm, or better than that, to do help. Because food should be helpful, it should be fabulous, it should be fun. Candy should be part of it. It's a treat, it's fabulous and part of celebration. But we should talk about developing
And what does it really take? What does it really take? We would like to hear what everybody else thinks about that
Exactly.
too.
So we
on
can
the
just
floor.
contact you on the show floor.
Exactly.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
just take so they can just give you a business card or even a piece of paper and say, here's what my
Just
question
don't call
is.
me at 2 a.m. This
Okay.
would not be a 2 a.m. problem. However, this is a good problem that we would
When you
like
ask
to
those
go
words
through.
for on the show floor, that, I want people to come up to me and say, I want to sign an oath too. You're going to give me a business card, because we're going to serve them.
Because we certainly want to do this.
And they
we
can
think
also
that-
come
yeah.
to our party next time, which is not so small.
Oh,
Because-
good enough.
Yeah, and we have ginger
And we have
pickles.
lots and lots of tea and lots of
And
things.
ginger
And
pickles.
absolutely, candy, yeah.
Ginger pickles,
Ginger.
ginger woods.
Yes.
Yes, we got all of that, so that's great. Well, thank you for bringing the tea. I'm looking forward to going there, but I only hope that they're not talking about, if you put this in your product, it will be better for you, because food doesn't look nice.
So guess what, we're going to be looking for that.
Yes, we're going to be looking at
And
that.
I think everyone in this room will be looking for that.
So exactly,
That's going to be true.
exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks
this.
for coming.
Absolutely.
We'll
And
do
wait,
that.
next week, we have bourbon.
Not in tea and not before 5.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you for letting us sit in on your tea time. I think we have time for one, maybe 2 questions. Lori?
Thank you, ladies, much appreciated. So just a comment on the craft thing. I'm an ex-craft employee. So what they wanted to do, they didn't want to announce it right away, because if they announced it right away, they'd immediately get people saying, you changed the flavor, you changed the flavor, you changed the flavor. And so what they did was they waited 6 months and monitored consumer complaints to find out that people weren't really noticing. And then when they announced it, they could say, now don't come and tell us that it tastes different, because we already know, we've been monitoring our complaints and we're okay. Just want to clarify that.
This is why we need wise people in the audience to help us with that. Thank you.
And
Lori.
context, because that's really
Context
helpful to
matters.
everybody to understand what happened. Yes.
By the way, we are used to anybody poking holes in what we say, so we're not offended at all. That's what makes our arguments stronger and makes us wiser. Any other questions? Thank you for coming.
All right, enjoy the expo.